This is Selling Susquehanna with Lisa Barrick, your guide to the heart of Pennsylvania real estate.
Here we are again with Selling Susquehanna. Chad Evans along with Lisa Barrick. Hello.
Hello.
Lisa Barrick from Remax Bridges out there in Lewisburg, making miracles happen each and every day, getting busy in the springtime.
Yeah.
Getting your listings.
I have all these sarcastic comments to that, but yes, no, yeah.
You got a list of sellers, you got a list of buyers.
Very busy, yeah.
So it's pretty good right now.
It is.
That's great.
Yeah, the market's getting really busy. So it's good. What we want.
I love it. You're trying to sell me a cabin.
I am.
We have to negotiate a little bit. So we're going to keep the same format with this episode. People submit their questions anonymously to you, and we got a handful of questions that we're going to go over, and we need those answers.
All righty. I'm ready.
You ready to go?
We're just discussing how my feet don't touch the floor.
Well, you got the boots on.
I'm at a swivel issue.
Yeah, don't move.
I'm trying.
First question for you, Lisa.
Yes.
It says, we are first-time buyers and we know nothing about purchasing a home. Where do we start? That's a common question.
Yeah, so we had talked about this in another episode, but obviously it bears repeating, and I keep getting this question over and over. Everybody I talk to says, can you talk about, and I'm like, okay. So we're going to talk about it again.
Yeah.
So when you're first getting ready to buy, you're excited, you're ready to do this, and you're looking online and everything, and you're picking out houses that you want to see. You call me and I stop you and I say, have you been pre-approved for a mortgage? Now, if you can pay cash, that's a totally different scenario. But otherwise, have you been pre-approved for a mortgage? And I will tell you that I've had people in the past that don't know me real well who just call me kind of out of the blue, actually hang up on me because they want to look at houses without getting pre-approved. And I'm like, that's just not how it works.
Yeah.
But anyway, for the most part, that doesn't happen. So you need to go and see what you qualify for. I can recommend a bunch of lenders. You might have somebody already in mind who will pre-approve you for a type of financing. Now, the type of financing you get is really important. Conventional financing is the most typical type of financing. There are also government-backed or government-insured loans. And that means if you're a veteran, you might qualify for VA financing, which is a great benefit for veterans. But there are different requirements for the condition of the property that you're purchasing. And same with like an FHA mortgage or a USDA loan or some of these other programs that allow you to maybe do lower down payments. They might have a rate adjustment that might be a little bit beneficial. They may allow you to get more seller concessions, which is something we can talk about. Things like that. So they're good loans to get, but they have more specific requirements and they have a specific appraisal for that type of loan. So that's information I have to have as your realtor when we're looking at properties, because I need to look at the property with those eyes. So they're not major things. They're mostly like health and safety concerns. So if there's peeling paint, that's something that would need to be scraped and painted and corrected prior to you even getting approved for your mortgage. That's not the pre-approval. This is at the point where you're already under agreement with the property and you're getting inspections and the appraisal and all that kind of thing.
Okay.
They've got requirements about, there has to be a firewall between the house and the garage. Things that you might not really realize when you're looking at the property. Handrails, for anything, I think it's like 2 steps or more, there has to be a handrail. So just things like that, condition in general. If there's a big hole coming through the ceiling, they're not going to finance that. But anyway, so those are important things that I have to know. So you have to go get that pre-approval. Plus, we had talked about before that you need to know what you can really afford or how much of a loan a bank is going to give you.
You'll just be wasting time if you don't.
Because otherwise you're going to get yourself really frustrated looking at a bunch of properties that you really can't afford. Or you're looking at property that are below what you can afford and they're not meeting your expectations or meeting your needs and what you really want in a home. So go get that information. It's important to have. And there's other pieces to getting a loan in terms of there's closing costs. There's additional monies that you're going to need to have in reserves to pay at the time of closing for things like title insurance and transfer taxes and real estate taxes and things that are upfront as part of the closing costs of a loan. So that's all stuff that both your lender and myself can work through with you and explain. But a lot of people go into purchasing not knowing that they're going to have that. Like the day of closing, you're going to need to have funds for that. So that's important to know as well. So you need all that financial information up front. There was another point that I was going to make. If anybody wonders if this is all scripted in advance, no, it is not.
So once you have your budget, in a sense, then that's all ready to go, and then you can go shopping,
right?
And then
Exactly.
you help them,
exactly. So I get so caught up in that piece that I forget like what's the next step. Okay. So then once we know that, like I or whoever your realtor is can get searches set up for you in the multiple listing service. You're looking on Zillow or wherever, and that's good too. But the MLS gives you a little bit more detailed information. Then we can start shopping, basically. And it is a really competitive market. The biggest thing I'm telling buyers today is you've got to be patient. Things are selling very quickly. I was telling Chad before we started rolling that I had all these appointments scheduled for this week, and one by one they've been canceled because properties have been getting multiple offers in less than a day. And, a lot of buyers don't necessarily want to have to compete with other offers, and some of them are going much higher than list price, and people don't want to get into that. So, and then, the rest of the purchasing part is kind of things that as I explain as we go along. So even as I'm showing houses, I'll tell them, so this is something we're going to want to have inspected or make a contingency of the offer that you eventually make, have inspected. I talk about septic systems. I talk about radon. I talk about, all those different things. So I try not to pummel you with all that information right up front when you call me and say, hey, I'm ready to buy a house. I kind of like piecemeal it out as we're going along. So by the time you are making an offer, you're really pretty prepared. Like, oh, we already talked about this.
Yes.
Yeah, we already talked about this.
Yeah, you're all informed.
So, exactly.
Yeah.
So
it's not a hard process. It's really not.
It's really not if you have somebody guiding you through it.
Yeah.
And that's my promise to my buyer clients is that I will guide you through every step of the way. And I try to make this process as simple and stress-free for you as possible. I try to do as much of the minutia as possible, scheduling inspections, scheduling appraisals, ordering title work, getting documents to the lender, all those kinds of things, so that you don't have to deal with that stuff because, you probably already have a job.
Yeah.
Keeps you pretty busy.
And remember, it's not like TV, that show business where you watch a TV show and a realtor will show a husband and a wife 3 houses. We have this one, we have this one, and we have this one. Take your pick. Right. So that's just silly. And they do that within 22 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And in those kinds of markets, you're talking that multi-million-dollar, famous people, whatever, kind of markets. They actually pay a buyer's agent to go find them a property. So, if anybody wants to do that, I am open to that. You want to give me a hunk of change and then I'll go shopping for you? Hey, I'm open to anything.
Happy to do that.
Yeah, not going to happen though. So, so they really do hone down those 3 properties and say, okay, this is what we've got. Pick one. But that's
That's a horse of a different color, as I say. Right? That's different than what we're talking about.
For sure.
Okay. Well, I think you answered that pretty well. I think you did.
Possibly more thoroughly than you wanted.
That's what you heard it here first.
Completely unscripted here at Selling Susquehanna.
Another interesting question, which I've heard this term a lot, it's called house poor. And house poor. Can you explain what that means when you're house poor?
Yeah, and that's actually normally part of what I would have said with the first question, and I'm surprised I didn't. So,
well, here we go.
That's
Question number 2.
That's a good question. How am I going to say? You will get pre-approved for a mortgage, and the lender may say you're pre-approved up to $600,000. Well, what the lender's not looking at is all of your life expenses. They're looking at your major recurring expenses, credit cards, car loans, things of that sort, your major debts. They're not looking at what you spend on a daily basis or, monthly basis for daycare, car insurance,
groceries,
gas, groceries. You probably want to have a life and you probably go out to eat. You might enjoy going to concerts.
Yeah.
Maybe you like to get away every couple weekends. You travel. You have certain priorities in your life. Gym membership. Whatever. Streaming subscriptions, that's got to take like $2,000 a month out of my income.
Yes. Yes.
Just kidding.
But we need it.
Anyway, yes.
It's a necessity.
Yeah, it is a necessity. All those things. So what you want to do is sit down and look at, most people do not ever sit down and look at what they really spend every month. So however you track that, if you do everything on credit cards, if you pick up, however, go through and track that. And maybe you even want to do like a quarterly look, or even maybe even biannual, depending on how things like car insurance, like whenever those certain things revolve and come into it. But just look at your expenses, say, okay, this is what I spend to live.
Yeah.
That the bank's not looking at. And I'm comfortable there, or maybe there's some things you can cut out,
Yeah.
that aren't really necessities, but this is my life and this is comfortable. And this payment that the lender said I can be pre-approved for, which probably includes a portion for taxes and insurance, I'm not really comfortable with that, because if I do that, I can't do all these things. So look at that and realize that what you're pre-approved for, you don't necessarily have to spend. I have clients right now I'm working with who are spending maybe a little bit more than half of what they actually qualify for, because they found a home, meets all their needs. It's in a location that is perfect for them. They ended up loving everything about it. And, it's a lot less than what they qualify for, and they feel really good about that. And, I will tell you, if you think that your buyer's agent's goal is when they get that pre-approval letter that says like, oh, they can buy $1 million homes, that we're like, yes, I'm going to sell them $1 million home. That's not the truth. I just want to sell you a home that you are going to love. So when we chat and when I'm following up with you after we've closed on the house to see how life's going, to see how everything's going, I just want you to be happy.
Yeah.
And that is the truth. That's the genuine truth. So as long as you're spending within your budget, I don't care what you do. Because if you're house poor and you're miserable and now you can't do anything and things are breaking down in your house and now you can't afford to fix them, or there's improvements you want to make, now you can't afford to do them. There's a, really great, Hardy concert coming up and you can't go because my mortgage payment. You're just going to be resentful and bitter and
have buyer's remorse.
Exactly.
And now you're living
so now
this
you're
life.
House poor. Wow. And you don't want that.
Yeah. Do you see, has that happened on occasion where they use the full amount almost to their budget and they're like, get this out of here. We get like, do you see that? Has that happened?
I've had people that within a couple years realize they bought way more house than they needed and way more expensive than they needed. And they're like, I don't know, their eyes got real big and, kind of like ordering too much food, because it all looks so good, and then realizing I could never eat all this. Why did I do this? Well, they bought too much house, and all they're doing is living to pay for their house, and they're not happy. And they're like, you know what? We're gonna simplify. We're gonna get rid of a bunch of stuff that we don't, we don't need all that stuff. And they're much happier.
And that's what life's all about, Lisa.
Hey, absolutely.
Being happy.
It is. It absolutely is.
That's all we got.
Yeah.
Thank you for that answer. Your next question comes through anonymously yet once again. And it says, I am interested in starting to buy investment properties. Like your friend Chad is. I just said interested in it. Yeah. Some people have warned me not to. What do you advise? So again, the question is, I am interested in starting to buy investment properties, but some people have warned me not to. What would you say to this person? What is your advice?
I'm trying to think of why someone has warned them not to. I can probably guess why. So
because they had bad experiences.
Right. Probably because they had bad
tenants.
experience. Yeah.
Something.
Yeah. No, that probably is why. That probably is why. So, first of all, yes, it's a good idea to buy investment properties. Again, make sure all your ducks in a row. Financing is going to be a little different for that. You're going to want to talk to your lender about using equity in your current home, leveraging certain things. There's other pieces that go into the financing with that one, so I won't get into the weeds about that.
And
but,
we're talking maybe like Airbnbs, like commercial properties,
anything,
warehouses.
Well, geez. Okay, now we're going. Well, I was just talking about like a nice double house with tenants living in it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But you could certainly get into other things. But if somebody's just starting out, they're probably looking to buy maybe a double that's rented and get that income, or even a single family house and renting it out or something to that effect. That's probably where they're starting, most likely. Real estate is still one of the best investments you can make, long-term investments that you can make, unless you're remodeling and flipping, and that's a different thing. Market might go up and down, but for the long term, it's still your best investment. You can use that property over time people use their properties to pay for college for their kids, using the equity and things like that. So always, I'm going to recommend investing in real estate. When you're just starting out, besides the financing piece and talking to a lender and all that kind of stuff, again, you'd have a realtor who can advise you on what makes sense in terms of if that property is already generating income, or what kind of condition it's in, or how much money you're going to have to put into it to really bring it up to where it should be. Excuse me. Yeah. I always said, before I invested in investment properties.
Before you invested in the investment
before I bought any investment properties, I would not buy a property or lease a property out to somebody unless I would live in it myself.
Okay.
So that was my personal caveat. So I waited until I felt comfortable enough. Well, I also have this other person in my life who's owns a construction business.
And that doesn't hurt anything.
Certainly helps, because we don't necessarily have to pay somebody for everything to do all those repairs. He, meanwhile, is like, you could pay me. But anyway. So that definitely helps. But so you want to look at things with a pretty discriminating eye and see what kind of income it's generating and what kind of future income it can generate, which, again, your realtor can help you with. Because there might be somebody who's been living in that property for 100 years and the landlords just never raised their rent because they just like them and they're easy and they've been there forever, whatever. But really that say half double is actually worth like $1,500 a month, but they're paying $700, whatever. Yeah. So, the other thing that I highly recommend, if you are investing and you're not somebody who is super handy or who has a lot of time, there's certain people by virtue of their profession or family life or whatever, they just don't have a lot of spare time on their hands. Put together a team. You want, first of all, your investment banker who you kind of create a loyal relationship with. I've bought multiple properties and I always work with the same person because it's easy peasy and he knows us and he knows, whatever. So I've got a relationship with him. An accountant, because the accountant can look at things that are smart about how, say you're like, I have cash available that I can buy an investment property. Well, your accountant might not think that's a wise idea. They might actually want you to get a loan for tax purposes and deductions. So have a good accountant, have a good attorney. You're going to want to, I would recommend, form a limited liability corporation or LLC. The LLC protects all your personal assets, so that if anything were to happen on the property or whatever, that your corporation's liable. You're not personally liable. You're not going to lose your home, that kind of thing. And that's very important. And it's super easy to create. I mean, it's just a matter of filing some paperwork, but the attorney takes care of all that. So have a good attorney who you trust. Make or create relationships with certain contractors. Even if you are the person that can do a lot of work, there's certain things that, we're not all experts in everything. Like your cardiologist is probably not going to do your colonoscopy. We're not all experts in everything. So you might be really great at framing or roofing or, whatever. But when it comes to electrical, you're like, nah, or plumbing or whatever. So form relationships with those experts in those fields and treat them well. So when you call somebody to go, especially when you have an emergency situation in the middle of the winter, the furnace went out, my tenant is freezing, please get out there, whatever. Pay those people immediately. Don't let them make them wait 30 days, do whatever. Pay them immediately, treat them well, treat them with respect, refer them to other people, and you're going to build a team so that when something happens with our properties, there's a team of people that we can call for things that Tim would prefer not to do, that they will respond to us right away because we treat them well. So that's a really important thing to do. And if you have that team around you, there's, you'll be able to keep your property in good shape. The whole leasing and all that kind of stuff, that's part of it. But that, again, is your realtor can advise you on things like that, like leases and standard documents and credit checks and all that kind of thing. And then there's other things you can get into about like managing the property and how rents are paid and all that kind of stuff. For me, if you're just starting out and you're semi-local to that property, you could just deal with your tenants yourself. If you get into owning more and more properties where it's starting to take up a lot of time, you might want to consider having a real estate company manage those rentals for you so that you don't have to be dealing with all the maintenance costs and things like that. But bottom line, it is a good investment. It's not you might not get rich from the rents that somebody is paying you necessarily, but it's the investment in that property for the long term, and somebody's paying for it as you own it.
And that's the passive income in a sense.
Absolutely. It's paying for itself. That's the goal anyway. Occasionally you're going to have something you're going to have to put on a roof. We had to do that.
You can learn a lot from Monopoly, the game Monopoly. You got 4 houses on Boardwalk. That's where I learned about investments.
I wouldn't know because my siblings would never let me play.
Oh.
So
that's what happened.
Yes.
That's what happened.
Yes. I had to learn about real estate the hard way.
All right. Last question from a viewer. It says, we are listing our house for sale. Oh, I love this one. So we're listing our house for sale, and I want to be present for the showings, inspections, and all that jazz. They say, no one knows my house like I do. Plus, I don't really trust strangers being in my house. My agent is against me being present. Why would this be an issue?
Gosh.
You might be nuts.
I'm like groaning as you're reading the question. Okay. First of all, sometimes I have to say to people who are like, nobody knows this house like I do. This is not rocket science. It's a structure. It's a house. It's, bricks and mortar and stick built, and maybe it's a modular, maybe it's whatever. For the most part, we're pretty well educated, and we can figure it out.
4 walls and a roof. We got it.
Yeah, exactly. So, and a lot of those little minutia details that you're going to insist upon pointing out to somebody, they don't want to know. And they're also on a schedule. That buyer's on a schedule. So, you don't want to be present. It's very uncomfortable for buyers to go look at your house and have you there hanging over them. I mean, it's just really uncomfortable. They don't feel like they can really relax. They don't feel like they can have a conversation, talk about how this, that, or the other thing would work for their family.
You'll get offended when they criticize the color of your living room.
Well, that's another thing. That's a really good point. So just don't be there. Trust the realtors. We do actually have a lot of education. We will point out things that the buyer should pay attention to. If we have questions, we will certainly go to whoever your listing agent is and get the questions, and we might get questions answered directly from you. You're also going to have filled out a seller's property disclosure, which is 11 pages long. So there's a lot of that information is already in there. So yeah.
It's your job to represent that.
Right, exactly. So, when you said about the
color of the walls of the living room.
Not like the colors of the walls. So this is a story that I've told lots of people over almost 32 years when they tell me they want to be present. So I remember as a young teenager, my parents were selling the house I grew up in. I was not happy, of course. And for some reason, we were home in my head, it was a home inspection. I don't really know what it was. But anyway, so I remember we had in our family room, we had these beams. My parents had custom built this house. And we had these beams, and the woman buyer was talking about how I am ripping those beams out. That's the first thing we're doing, whatever. And I was devastated. I mean, I was already upset because I didn't want to sell the house. But I was devastated. And I was so mad, how dare she change my beautiful house, whatever. Yeah. And I was a kid, so, and I would think, adults don't want to hear it either. The people that own that house that have put blood, sweat, tears, and a lot of money into it, they don't want to hear about all the changes that are going on. So save yourself as the seller having to hear all that. You just don't want people. You think your house is absolutely perfect and you love it and you're leaving it, and that person's going to come in and totally change it. And they have all kinds of ideas. Some people don't get that emotional about it, but a lot of people do.
Yeah,
so save yourself that and just don't be there. And as for trusting people, there's a lot of security in how real estate showings are handled these days. If you're uncomfortable, put cameras in your house. Everybody else has them. So put cameras up. You just can't record people because it's wiretapping fraud.
You can't do that. But that makes perfect sense.
Let's not call it the FBI.
That makes perfect sense. When you were selling my property, I would always say, do you want me to come along? Do you need help?
Yeah,
and you're like,
no. Heck no. You are going to kill that sale. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Well, although, that's another thing. There are times when I'm listing a property and the sellers are like, they could have a beautiful home and they're doing nothing but pointing out all the problems. Oh, I always hated that. And that thing does this and blah, blah, blah. And I will look at them and say, thank God you're not marketing this place, because they have nothing positive to say, because, you get that kind of intimidation factor when somebody comes into your home and all of a sudden you're making excuses for everything and you're seeing all these things that to you are flawed. To most other people are not flawed at all. They're perfectly fine, whatever. So there's part of that too. So it's like, please be as far away as possible when we're showing this house, because you are not going to contribute to this, whatever. Not that we're hiding or concealing anything, but just that they're getting that, oh, it's not that pretty, whatever. They're being humble, I guess is a word. And I'm like, this is no time for humility.
Selling Susquehanna with the legendary Lisa Barrick. How can people get a hold of you, in touch with you, if they are interested in selling, buying?
They can call me, they can text me, they can message me on Facebook and Instagram.
Good.
There's actually several other ways, but probably too many to list.
Probably too many.
Yeah.
Keep it simple.
If you can't figure out, you can pick up the telephone.
Yeah. Sometimes they do
I
that.
will accept telephone calls.
There you go. Well, good. If you're in the market, if you're looking to get in the market, maybe you're thinking about investing, talk to Lisa. She'll help you out. Lisa Barrett, Selling Susquehanna. We'll do it again next time. Thanks for watching.